like to call to order the September meeting of Planning and Zoning. And if we could do a roll call, please, Andy.
Yes. All right. Commissioner Sveska.
Present.
Commissioner Holm. Commissioner Bruno.
Here.
Chair Costello.
Here.
Commissioner Tantillo. Present via phone. Commissioner Skovich.
Here.
And Commissioner Gormley Barnes.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum.
Okay, please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, did all commissioners have a chance to read the minutes from the August meeting? Any corrections, modifications?
Nope.
If so, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the August meeting?
I move to approve. Oh, sorry. I move to approve the minutes from the August meeting.
Okay, Danielle, and second?
I'll second.
Second, Diane. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous vote to approve the minutes. Thank you. And, okay, our next order of business is a petition for a fence at 11399 Sequoia that was continued from the last meeting, I understand. Okay, now do we have to move to enter a...
Since it's continued, we're all right.
Okay. Okay, is Mr. Amico present? Okay, hi. How are you?
Good, doing well, thank you.
Okay, do you have something to share with us?
Sure, so I had purchased a lot, I'm going to say maybe 8 years ago. That fence had been existing from the previous owners of that property. So when I had received a notice that you have to have some special zoning for a fence, I said, well, as far as I know, this fence has been here forever, whatever, not forever, but for a long time. So I had gone to each of the neighbors. So the neighbor east of me, his name is Art Schroeder, and Art has been in that home since he was born. So I'm going to say he's probably maybe late 50s, and he said he's been there his whole life now. His dad, who was there before, said that the previous homeowner of that lot prior to Art Sr. passing away said that they had raised goats and I think different type of dogs, animals, I don't know, back in the 60s as well. So I had gone to the other neighbors. Some have been there 30 plus years, 20 years. They all said that that fence has been there as long as they've been there as well. So anyway, just as a confirmation. The trees, again, I don't know how close they were when that fence was planted, but some of them have grown through that particular fence. The bushes, shrubs are all through it. So if somebody stood in the backyard and they looked out, first off, nobody would even see the fence because it's just enmeshed in the, we'll call it the wilderness of the little forest back there. The neighbors have said it does keep out, we'll say the coyotes, but not the deer, so whatever that is. But they want it. They all said, no, it's been here forever. One of the neighbors said 20 years ago, her husband has passed since then, but she said, oh no, we had to do this 20 years ago and it was fine. I'm like, okay, I don't know. So I said, we just have to go through this process. So anyway, I did talk to the neighbors. They all want the fence. I'm like, that's fine.
Okay.
Hopefully I'll submit that to the zoning committee. So
are there any questions for our petitioner?
Just to clarify, Andy,
Yeah.
the survey that we have here is actually for 11415 West Plainfield. Is that fence that's indicated on the east end side of that lot, the actual, it's on the west side of...
That's his lot that it's
Okay.
up against. It's actually, when this first came up, the gentleman at the Plainfield address, wasn't there a little confusion of who actually owned the fence?
there was. They
Yeah.
had called me and I said, oh yeah, no, it's I know it surrounds the property, so I'll take responsibility. It's fine.
Okay. So the photos we're seeing are of the actual fence?
Sure,
and
that's
the-
correct.
and the
That's
survey
right.
is
Yep.
just labeled
Right.
with the other address. Okay.
And that was taken, I'm going to say, maybe in the earlier spring. Now, if you look at that, since the shrubs have probably blossomed since then, it looks pretty full. You don't even see it, to be honest with you. It's pretty thick back there.
I see that staff is recommending that we approve the special use for the fence with the same conditions that we have in the past several examples. Do you have a comment, Daniel?
I have a couple of comments,
Sure.
actually. And I think when we had originally had this on the agenda, excuse me, I sent some comments in to both of you, so I'm going to kind of reiterate those from my brain, but I might have missed some things. First thing, I have walked that property.
Okay, sure.
Probably 2 winters ago.
Okay. So you know.
And I agree with you. You
Yeah.
cannot see that fence.
Right.
Which kind of leads me to my second
Okay.
point. Because you cannot see it, and because this fence is of a different type of material than what we've been talking about on the other fences that we've allowed up, I have some concerns about safety. I mean, it's very rusty. The metal poles that are holding it up are very rusty. I'm concerned about injuries. Someone accidentally getting tetanus from that,
Sure.
for example. The trees have grown into it. Absolutely, completely agree. And I think because we as a village are so concerned about preserving our trees, my concern with allowing it to perpetuate is that it would cause further damage to those trees as they continue to grow. So my personal thought on this one is that because this is so different from the other cases that we've looked at in the village, I would actually request that the village have perhaps an arborist go out, evaluate those trees, and then go ahead and pursue removal of the fence as soon as possible to avoid anything like an injury from someone that couldn't see the fence, or from wildlife that might be transversing through that area. So that's my thought on this at the moment. Not at your expense.
Sure.
It would be something
Sure.
for the village to do.
I understand. Good thought.
I'm sorry, I think there was a comment.
Oh, I just had a question. I was concerned that if the fence, because this is where the.
Would you mind coming to?
Yeah, could you
sorry, would
come
you mind
to-
coming to the mic?
Walsh. I'm Kathy.
Thank you. Could you come to the
No,
mic so
it's
we can
being
all hear you?
televised,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah, I'm Kathy Walsh. We live next to each other, and the fence is between us. So my concern with cutting, if the fence were cut around, let's say here's like these old 200-year-old oaks. Like, let's say it was cut, then I feel like I don't want the tree. Obviously, the tree cannot be cut down, but I wouldn't want then little metal. Like right now, there's no sharp pieces anywhere sticking out, and I feel like then there'd be little sharp pieces sticking out of fence.
And that's why I would recommend having it done professionally by someone
Yeah.
who could mitigate that. I mean, like I said, I have walked that area,
Yeah.
and I actually got myself stuck in that fence.
Okay.
Which is why it snagged my pants, and I was like, oh my gosh, where'd this fence come from? And this was in winter.
Okay.
When it was, potentially with a higher amount of visibility.
Okay.
So, we would hate for somebody to get hurt.
And I do understand that, but for whatever it's worth, no one walks back there typically. Like we don't, you don't, and we're the only one, and then no one's walking around the fence. And there's no real logical place to walk through the fence.
It's not like a public, there's no public
It's
access
just
to it.
us.
It's really just the backyard.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I
but
just
I mean,
thought I'd
we
mention
all,
that.
since we are an open village, right? We all kind of
Yeah,
share crossing through yards and sharing spaces. I mean, just to kind of perpetuate that
Yeah.
village kind of feel that we have. So,
Okay.
that's just my personal thought on it. And I mean, obviously, you guys aren't using it to contain anything, right? You don't need it to contain goats or dogs or anything.
We have
Um,
dogs. We have two
Right,
dogs.
but we don't allow fences for that.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think, Andy? Would an arborist would the village pay for an arborist to take a look?
If that's what the commission and the board want us to do, then yeah.
Because if
we,
there
we,
is-
and we have an arborist on staff.
Yeah, because if there is damage being done to the trees, be nice to know if we can mitigate that.
Yeah, it is ultimately his trees, though. But yeah, if that's the direction that the commission and board wants to go, we can do that.
Yeah. I have just, in terms of using Davy Tree Service, I've used them over the last probably 7 years to, put put special things in the ground and do this and that and everything else. They've never said anything to me about that, so I don't know.
No
if it is a
comments
concern.
about-
They've never said anything like, oh, you should do something about, but I always ask them, how's the health of this tree? What's going on with this one? So
Yeah.
I've spent probably close to $20,000 over the last, a lot of money with them to make sure the trees are good, and some chestnut oak borer, and I don't know,
Yeah.
everything else that
Yeah.
comes along with the trees. So
Yeah, I would have to plead ignorance on, the effect it's having on the
Sure.
trees and,
sure.
I mean, based on the age of the fence from the 60s, you can assume that it has lead in it. You can assume that it has other heavy metals that could be affecting the growth of the tree, which you wouldn't know until you actually
Yeah.
had someone who's a professional. But based on the age and what I see, in the pictures, that would just be my concern.
Any other comments or thoughts?
Andy's, the trees are the property owner's responsibility, though, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
This is the second time we've heard this petition?
No, it had been continued from a couple of meetings ago because of availability of the petitioners.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I for one would like to know more information from a professional. We're
We
just
can,
kind of guessing here.
Well, if you'd like, we can continue it again, and we can have the village arborist take a look if it's all
Or
right with Mr.
even,
Amico.
with the pictures, maybe he could even give us some insight.
Yeah, I'm no expert either, so I don't know. But that's no issue. We'll have the village arborist take a look and give a diagnosis.
And make a recommendation to
What
us.
end are we taking that to?
Well, I think that's the question. So if he comes back and says it is damaging the trees, I think
Right.
that's
I mean, then
really
what
for the
we-
commission and the board to decide how to handle.
We
that
might recommend that
information.
it be removed right away.
Yeah.
I would think you would damage. Well, we'd see, but I would think removing it would damage the tree worse. If that were.
Well,
to
I mean,
the-
Yeah, I don't know.
so the
I think
removal.
you're saying for the safety more so of
well,
running into it.
I'm saying that the removal process isn't necessarily recommending extracting the medical particles from the tree. It's keeping the tree from growing further, embedding itself into the metal. Right. So yes, absolutely removing that from the tree would kill it. I can tell you that, and I'm not an arborist, but
Well, and then the other issue that you raised about the safety considerations, that
yeah, like I said, I got stuck in
arborist
it.
isn't an expert in fence
So,
removal, but if there's a way to
Yeah.
do something for the health of the trees and also remove
Yeah.
any sort of
and those
hazardous
rusty fence posts that are
conditions.
there. They're the old school galvanized metal ones that have clearly rusted out. I don't know that you want to leave that in a yard for someone to potentially get hung up on. What if somebody's dog got loose and comes running through your yard and gets hung up in that? You're looking at vet bills. You're looking at all kinds of potentially nasty things.
It's going to be a heck of a job removing that no matter when.
Right.
Yeah.
But now that I think about it, how this is affecting the tree be any worse if we let it continue?
Well, so let's say, let's look at maybe this picture of this presumably oak tree, right? My guesstimation from this image is that the fence looks like it's embedded
Oh.
maybe a half inch.
Mm.
So if the fence stays up with the tension that's on it right now, and as the tree grows against tension, it's going to absorb more of that into its structure.
I see, you're right.
So it's going to continue to essentially impale itself on this metal structure. And like you said, these are beautiful oak trees. Like we'd like to keep.
Sure.
You've obviously done a lot of work.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you've obviously done a lot of work, and which is awesome because
Yeah.
a lot of people don't care about their trees
Right.
as much as that. So that's really nice to hear. And I think it would be nice to maybe get a professional opinion and see what they think, and use that as a basis for a further decision.
So, how about the other issue? If we weren't talking about the trees, and we saw a fence like that had sharp edges and had rust,
Rusty
would we
metal.
probably
I mean,
vote to
that-
have it removed right away?
Yeah, I mean, like if this was one of those hurricane fences, right? I think
Mm.
that would fall under the, it hasn't been kept up, right? It
Mhm.
hasn't been maintained.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore it would merit removal, as
Mhm.
far as I understand.
Mm-hmm.
If I can just chime in here, you mentioned that you had spent a pretty good amount of
Oh,
money
sure.
with your own
Yes,
tree company
Yes.
over the last couple of years.
that's correct. Yeah. Well, primarily for when building the new home there, I wanted to make sure the beauty of the lot are the trees. And I enjoy trees. And so I wanted to make sure, how do we preserve every tree as much as possible? And so that's why I had gone through the time and investment to make
Mhm.
sure the trees would stay alive. Unfortunately, I lost 2, even though we did everything we could. I've lost 2 in the front now, more recently. I'm not sure if it's from, I guess, root shock, or whether it's done through chestnut borer, or done through Davy themselves when they came to do certain things. They took off some of the bark, and does that now cause pests to
Sure.
gain into the tree? Anyway, so I'm working on actually removing 2 trees that are already no good. But I have spent considerable amount of resources to maintain them.
Yeah, the point I'm making is I just want to make sure that we're careful not to
Sure. Oh, yeah.
substitute, our sense of urgency with the effort that you've already
Sure,
made to,
sure.
preserve your trees.
Right.
They're ultimately your responsibility.
Sure.
So, I just think we need to, as a board and village, be
Yeah.
careful of, not creating some artificial timeline when it's pretty well established that he's taking care of, stuff on his lot.
Sure.
And if that involves a deeper conversation between staff and the homeowner, that's fine. But, just saying for the sake of the safety of the tree that we need to do X, Y, and Z, I just want to make sure that
Right, absolutely.
we're
Yep.
acknowledging what you've tried to do thus far.
Absolutely.
So then I think the focus of the conversation, if we took that out, would be the structure of the fence itself.
Yeah, would you agree that it's in bad repair at this stage?
It is
I mean,
rusty.
it is old.
Definitely, it's rusty. I mean, if you go out and you look, it's rusty. But like I said, the bushes, trees have grown up through it.
Uh-huh.
So can you see that fence? Not really.
Uh-huh.
So it's there, but it's not, and for whatever reason, I think it becomes part of the attachment of the neighbors, each of the neighbors that has that particular fence, it's their fence. It's not, granted, it's maybe on my property, but they perceive it as it's their thing. They're taking care of it. They're doing whatever they want that particular fence. So, I'm good with keeping the fence. I like the fence. It's fine. But so if there's a way to keep it, I think that's what the neighbors would all want, because that's what they want. And to be a good neighbor, I want to go along with their
So
wishes.
how would you feel about if we said you could keep it until you sell the property?
Sure, I'm good with that. I hope I'm here a long time.
Well,
and then
I
the
mean,
new
it's just
neighbor has to.
kind of hard to weigh out the issue, right? Because
No,
there are a number of
exactly.
homes that have fences that, for lack of
Yep.
better terminology, are of better constructed material and in much better
Sure, I understand.
condition than this
Absolutely.
one.
Sure.
That we have said
Right.
they are not allowable due to our current
Sure,
provisions, or
absolutely.
they have to be removed in terms of X, Y, Z.
Right, absolutely.
So I'm just want to be sensitive
I
to
would-
the fact that this,
I would
this
be
is
fine
a
with
very
that.
different structure than what we've looked at previously.
Sure.
And I want to be cautious about
Mhm.
where we go, setting a precedent for, I understand you like it, I understand your neighbors
Sure.
like it, but then there's the village zoning code that says
No,
it
I
shouldn't have been
understand.
removed.
Right.
Yeah.
I just think because it's been a fixture for so many years, the neighbors are somehow, it's like they're attached to it. It's like, okay, this has been here forever. I like it. Okay, no change is the best change. That's how they somehow look at things.
So there's several pictures here it does not look rusty to me, but that's not the entirety of the
No, it's
fence.
just, I know it's been there a long time.
Mhm.
Right.
Andy, does that condition get recorded?
I'm sorry, what?
This is Rob. A question for Andy. previously, didn't we have a similar situation before us where a fence or a wire rusted fence like we have now, we approved it?
I,
Right in that?
I,
Just remember that.
I'm not entirely sure. I think we've had some old fences. And if this is, like Chair Costello was saying, some of the pictures look better than others as to the condition of it.
Yeah.
I don't.
In favor of that one homeowner that had a similar fence, we want to take into account the consistency of this situation, or if there are extenuating circumstances beyond what the previous homeowner had, then we just need to state that and justify it.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, I don't know how different this is from from the condition of the other ones. I mean, it is older. I think this is probably the oldest fence we've looked at.
This is actually a really good picture.
There was wire growing in. I don't know if it was a tree or a bush, but we didn't seem too concerned at the time. So I'm just trying to be consistent in our messaging to the village and the owners. And if it's true that we had a similar situation and we approved it, we should take that into account for this situation.
Well, I just want to point out this picture that was submitted, which is actually an excellent picture because it does show cracking and pointed edges sticking out where the fence is kind of bent over and it's sticking. So if we want to talk about conditions or conditions warranting repair, this is an excellent image for us to refer to.
It's probably not worth repairing.
No, I don't. I think it's an old fence. I don't even know how to repair it. I guess you'd have to put in new fencing in the spots that are old.
You'd really have to, yeah.
It would be pretty difficult, I think, once you start snipping it and pulling it away. I don't know.
And if it's doing damage to the trees, it's probably the sooner the better to get rid of it.
I don't know. I'm not really sure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how it affects, and that's a good point. How does it affect tree health? Don't know. I can't say.
Yeah, I think,
just know it's been there a long time, and the other neighbors wanted them. Okay, fine with me.
Yeah. Well, I think we looked at old fences that weren't in great repair, but they weren't a threat to safety, I don't think.
They were, the ones that I recall were like the hurricane/chain link fences,
Mm-hmm.
which are constructed, obviously very different from this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't recall the instance that Bob was thinking of, so I can't really pull that out of my brain for reference.
The fence has probably existed in some form like this for many years. I don't think it's like,
I'm sure it did.
Yeah.
So
we're trying really hard to get
I know.
the village in conformity,
Sure, right.
without unduly
special cases,
inconveniencing the homeowner, so our goal is to eventually have no fences.
I understand.
So let's set the two issues aside. If it were just based on the condition of the fence, how do you feel about requiring removal at this time, based on condition of the fence? Any thoughts?
I don't think that there's any reason to put the owner through that at this point in time.
Okay. What do you think, Danielle?
I don't think the homeowner should be responsible for removing it. I think the village should remove it, and I think
The question is when.
I think it should be done sooner rather than later based on condition.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the sole topic that we're focusing on, that would be my
Yeah, let's
personal
get this,
recommendation.
maybe this will decide it rather than going further and talking to an arborist. What do you think, Justin?
I think we should go with the staff's recommendation as we've done with the other ones. Allow it because Indian Head Park should have caught it years ago when we did our zoning or when they changed his ownership. And I mean, trees grow pretty slow. I think the way ours, we planted a few, they grow really slow. So I don't know how much it's going to take 20 years for it to grow another half inch into the fence, and this point, I would just recommend we stick to our plan that we've done with all the fences that were already put in.
Mm-hmm. Greg, what do you think?
This is Bob. My thought is, if the homeowner ever decides to remove the fence, that would come under the same direction that if he sold the property, the new owner would have to remove the fence. Am I right in assuming that?
The village would remove it
Prior to selling.
before selling. That's how we've done several cases up to now. And I think that for the purposes of this conversation, the distinguishing feature is the safety and the condition of the fence.
The village bears the costs and responsibility of removing it?
That's what we have granted to other homeowners up to now, based on the fact that we've let these fences go for so long.
We missed them.
We've said you have to remove it when you leave, and the village will cover the cost. That's what we've been doing.
Andy, you got that in the budget?
Yeah.
It's
Great.
So the question is, are we going to require this homeowner to remove it now? Are we going to make a recommendation that it be removed now? Or like others that arguably were in better condition, others we let the homeowner have the fence until they no longer own it.
I'd say the earlier of. The homeowner requests the village to remove it because he feels that it's a liability to him
Yeah.
as a property owner.
Well, he wants the fence, but in particular.
If it deteriorates to a point where he's concerned about trespassers getting hurt, he can petition the city or the township, the village for the sale to take down the fence.
Okay.
Or at sale, the earlier of.
I added a little condition. What do you think, Diane?
Yeah, in this case, I think that's a reasonable compromise, which is when the homeowner gets concerned enough about the potential liability of having it on their property,
Yeah.
come to the village and say, I'm not ready to sell yet, but my understanding is the agreement is when I'm ready to remove this fence, the village is going to do
Yeah.
it at the village's cost.
Yeah. Because you do have some liability.
Sure.
Mhm.
You know, if there are crazy kids playing out
Right,
there and
right, sure.
gets injured.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think of the new suggestion that we leave it to the homeowner to
I think that's a fair
request?
compromise.
I agree.
Okay, should we, so we're going to take a vote now on making a recommendation to the board that the fence be allowed to stay on the condition that it be removed before you move at village's expense. And if you think it's necessary to remove it earlier,
Sure.
you can request the village to do
Okay.
it at any time earlier.
Right, thank you.
What do you, and with, your neighbors all said it was fine, and you,
I've turned in all those
yeah,
sheets.
yeah. Did I miss anything on that?
No, I can do
motion?
a roll call.
Okay, so that's the motion, that we make that recommendation to the board. I suppose we'll do a roll call vote, huh?
Yeah.
Do we need a
We need a
second on the?
second,
I'll
yeah,
second
yeah.
it.
Oh, yeah, sorry. We need a first and a second, sorry.
Oh.
We need,
Then
you want to make the motion?
I'll make the motion what she said.
And a second?
And I will second it,
Okay,
what she
Okay.
said.
Let me write that down.
and we'll do a roll call vote on that. Yeah, you might want to walk it and just check it out
Sure,
again.
yeah, I'll do that as soon as the leaves fall.
All right, Commissioner Sveska,
Yes.
Commissioner Holm, Commissioner Bruno,
Yes.
Chair Costello,
Yes.
Commissioner Tanhill,
Yes.
Commissioner Skovich,
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes.
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
Motion carries. Okay, congratulations.
much.
Yeah, and
Thank
take a
you.
look and
Thank
see
you.
what you
Yes,
think
I
based
really
on all
do.
that
Thank you very
discussion.
And thanks for taking
Yes.
care of your
Oh,
trees.
thank you. Oh, sure.
Yeah.
thank
Seriously,
you.
thank you.
Yeah, and ask Davies what they think about that, too.
I will.
Yeah. Yeah. Have a nice
All right,
one.
thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Now, we're moving on, and do we have to have a motion to
Yeah,
open the
yeah,
public hearing?
Yeah.
I would like to entertain a motion to open the public hearing for unattached structure on Pontiac, but I don't see the, yeah, 6540 Pontiac, I think. 6520 Pontiac. Could somebody make that motion?
I'll second it.
And all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. The public hearing is now open, and this is a petition by Mr. Dubak, and he's petitioning for a shed that currently exists, as well as a pergola, and all the required materials have been submitted. Okay, and we have a lot of pictures on this one. And is our petitioner here tonight? Yeah. Yeah, you want to step up to the lectern and give us your name and address? And
Hi, Nick Dubak, 6520 Pontiac.
okay. And tell us a little bit about your situation. Were those structures there when you bought?
So the shed was relocated from our home at 6362 Pontiac, which existed since 2007. So it's been in the neighborhood before all the shed hubbub.
Oh.
So that's the origin of that. So
And that,
you know,
that
it's something that we do use, and you know, kids' bikes and the like. So
yeah. And what about the other structure that was already there?
that's from 2007, I believe it dates to. So,
Andy?
no, excuse me, not 2007. That would have been 2015.
Okay.
Was that built by the previous homeowner? Or?
No, that was part of our when we were in permit on.
Oh, so you had a permit for that
There
then?
was a renovation going on. That was the house that burned down.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of work going on at the time.
Sure.
So
The pool house was part of the permit?
presumptively, it was part of that. It was all being done at the same time. It wasn't reflected in any building plans.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, there was a lot of inspections being had at that time. So
Uh-huh.
I don't know how and if it was captured. We assumed a drawing set from the seller when we bought the home. So we bought the home with an architectural set that was carried into permit.
So Andy, is that something that the village approved then, that structure?
I don't think that was part of, kind of like you mentioned, I don't think it
It's
was
not
part
on the
of
drawing set.
the
So
plans.
Okay.
you know, we had inspections out there. There's a third party
Yeah.
inspection group. I don't think it's the same people y'all have today, but
Okay.
you know, so it's been there for a long time.
So my question is, I know we're referring to it in this as a pergola, but obviously it's not a pergola, right? It's got a full roof on it. And
yeah,
three
technically,
sides.
a pergola has to have the slots. I called it that just to distinguish it from the shed.
What's the size of the structure? Do we know?
I don't know.
It's 12 by 14, roughly speaking.
Okay, so it's bigger than what we would allow for a shed at present.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. How high is it? I know it's got like a
7
salt box
feet.
roof.
It kind of starts at about 7 foot and slopes down. It's
Okay.
probably 7'6" with the joist.
Okay.
And then it
And you
slopes
use
down.
this for storage as well?
No, it's part of the covered deck. The pergola.
It's really a cabana, isn't it?
Right.
Cabana,
It's a
yeah.
cabana. It's a
Yeah.
cabana. Let's call it what it is. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
That really, I mean, it's well built. It's not
Beautiful.
like, you know, it's a nice,
Mhm.
and my whole, when I first read through this too, then I was just thinking back, like when you tour all the surrounding neighborhoods, Hinsdale, Western Springs, Burr Ridge, they have additional structures like this, pergolas and cabanas, and it enhances the use of your house and the property value of the neighborhood as long as it's done well. And I think
And
the-
permitted.
and then I know we have the rule where you can't have a second structure, and that's for a dwelling, which I think should never go away. We don't want another piece of property where someone's going to live on it to have a house in there. And so I am in agreement that there needs to be a process for people to improve their land that they own. It's a nice sized property. It's bigger than most other properties in the area. And that's why it's great to have it, and people can come and get variances for certain reasons. We don't want someone building a chintzy something that's not taken care of. And so something like this enhances the property values of everyone, and it's not an ugly eyesore. And so I agree that permitted, but I think we have to have an avenue where we can do that. And I know we don't need to have another piece of property where someone can live in with plumbing, but something along these lines.
Yeah.
Does this have electricity in it? It looks like there's a light in the back.
There's a light on the back side of it that illuminates the pool only
Oh, sorry, I
when
think I was
manually.
talking about whatever.
Those are
this is
solar light caps.
That's a light cap in the back?
Are you
Sorry,
looking at
I can't see it very well.
deck posts?
No, it appears to be like a round orb-like structure on the very back wall of the cabana.
Oh, that's Wi-Fi.
Oh, so there's electricity there.
No, it's Wi-Fi, power
Just
over
Wi-Fi.
Ethernet. There's a
Okay.
light on the outside wall, so there's actually no other electricity other than that.
Okay.
There's an outlet on the back wall of it that would be for, cutting hedges and things like that. So there's an outside floodlight that illuminates the pool only by manual switch, and that's it.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I don't remember ever approving anything like this. In fact, I know there was a pool several years ago, and they wanted a little changing room, and we said absolutely not, a structure like this. And I think the closest we came is La Cedra's Cabana, and we made them move it into the buildable area and overlapping outside a bit from there.
Yeah, I mean, so we've got a couple things going on. As far as the special use criteria there's two. There's criteria for the shed, and then there's also criteria for the cabana. For the shed, it has to meet the criteria laid out in the ordinance, 10 feet at least from a setback, and then all the other requirements. And I think it does meet that. And I think not only that, but the garage size of Mr. Dubach is small enough that it meets the standards that we talked about in the past as well. So I think he meets the criteria for the shed. And then also for the cabana, I think he meets the criteria there as well. So that is an unattached structure, but it's not a shed. So the criteria is different. It just goes to the general special use criteria. And the general special use criteria is that it does not pose a risk to the public health, safety, and welfare, and would not cause substantial injury to the value of property in the neighborhood in which it is located. Like Commissioner Bruno was saying, if anything, it probably increases the property values.
Yeah.
But the issue really is just that the code has a strict prohibition against having two unattached structures.
Yeah.
The code must define somewhere what constitutes an unattached structure, right? I mean, we define sheds as something that was used for storage and, wasn't allowed to have plumbing or electricity. Is there a provision in the code that defines what an unattached structure can be?
So it's kind of vague. It says it really just says any, I think it might even use the term in it, not attached to the home.
It could be a garage.
And then it says it could including sheds, detached garages, etc. So it's open. But I would say the cabana would be a structure that's not attached, right? I mean.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm assuming that the decking that surrounds the pool was permitted. So the structure itself is attached to the deck, I think, which is what you were saying.
It is
So
decked.
you're calling it part of the deck.
Calling it a covered deck.
A covered deck.
And, yeah.
Was the deck permitted?
So there was a permit that included all the deck repairs, and it was all part of the original permit. We'd have to pull that file and see if there's any inspection slips on it, but
The
all
fire
done.
renovation
that
one?
that was all done at that time. It was like 2015, 16.
Okay.
But-
Yeah, I did see so when I went through to look through a permit log of permits, and so the pool itself that was built in the 80s, and then I did see that fire renovation. I didn't realize it had to do with anything outside, like near
Well,
the
it was
deck.
all done at the same time. So.
Okay, so I'll look, see what's in those plans. Yeah, I mean we can continue this and we can do more review.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how everybody else is thinking, but I don't know how we can make an exception here without really violating everything we've done up to this point. And I suppose it would matter if the village says, yes, it's okay in the past, then we have another consideration.
Yeah. I think we'll check that. As far as making an exception, I think, that's a trick. I mean, you'd have to grant a variance, which requires a unique circumstance, which may be, I don't know, because I know in the past the the village as a whole has been pretty flexible when it comes to deck variances. But yeah, I think the best step would be staff will review that permit, see if there's anything in there, and then take it from there.
I think that's the best we can do today is continue it and see if there's any evidence in our permit file in the homeowner's favor.
So, and if there's not, and it was just a walk down, where are we going from there?
It'd be up to the board, but our recommendation would be that it would have to come down.
Okay.
I think that's where we're going with this
So is
discussion.
that something you guys
Or it would
vote
be
on
we'd
today?
grant, like,
No.
it'd be either, we would
No.
say, we recommend no variance and no special use, is what.
Which
and
means it
then-
has to come down because it's already up.
Yeah, there's two. So, I mean, take the shed down?
So
Yeah.
one is, it's remove one or the other, is that what we're saying?
Yeah.
So, so we've been in this process since June. And the night before the first hearing, I got the phone call. And they said, hey, we need more time on this. Can you please come? There's going to be summer recess. Please come in September. So I said, no problem. I get the phone call from Kyle. Hey, I need to come visit your property. No problem. We made a date and time in early August. We met out there. We walked the property. Didn't seem to be an issue. I got visits as late as this afternoon at my home.
None of those people were decision makers. They were just,
I understand.
Okay.
Just walking you through where I'm at with it. So served on the shed committee to try and get this thing scrubbed out, and really that produced nothing. So at this point, it sounds like I'm left with one structure.
I say we wait to see what the permit says. If you pull that, we didn't do any
Yeah,
But
work
is the
on
permit
that.
going to still allow for a second structure?
No.
No, realistically, so it will be up to the board. Again, they could make the decision. My guess is that it would be down to like what you're saying. You'd have to pick one or the other.
Okay.
but unless you can make a case. I mean, if you, I would suggest you actually read the statute, read the ordinances, and then make your case and see how this fits in with our ordinances.
Well, the structure isn't really defined, unattached structure. So we can start with
We'll call it
definitions.
non-attached structure, so it fits the definition.
There's a
an
lot of
un-
unattached structures in this village that are existing, probably, contradictory to the code. And
Not anymore.
So-
That's why we're on our way to
So-
have the hearing on all of them. So that we are
so-
consistent.
So what is your wishes tonight? To continue this?
I think the conversation started with
Yeah.
you talking about these structures being built as part of an overall permitting
Yep.
process, not just for
Right.
this, but the house in general.
Not the shed, but
Right.
Yeah.
Like that was overall. That
Right.
was part of the drawings that you received from the seller. Is that correct?
yep.
Okay. And I don't think that there's anybody that's opposed to, talking more about that.
Okay.
I just think that until we know for certain that it's difficult to make a decision as to what the next logical steps are. That's all.
But my application is for a shed, okay?
Yep.
And just, if I could finish for a second. permitted, let's say we got a deck inspection on file, everything's okay, am I still going to be able to petition for the shed? Because if not, we might as well just get that out of the way.
Well, there's very little likelihood that we would approve 2 structures.
Okay. Despite the fact that we have maybe a permit on file for the deck.
You could make a case. If you can read the ordinance, you could say, this is why I'm different than everybody else. You can make a case for that. But right now, we don't have any evidence in front of us that says so. And that's why at your option, we can vote on this now, or we can continue it by giving you a chance to have more evidence based on what we see in the permit file. But it's your option. We could vote on it today.
Has Indian Head Park ever granted a variance for a second structure in the history of it?
I don't know.
I've been here a long time, and my best memory is
anyone come with
absolutely
one?
not.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, because like, if we should have a way for people to do this, I think.
Well, we weren't even given one structure for years and years and years.
Right.
So it's all kind of new now.
I mean, just in our notes here, it says both structures, need a variance would need to be granted for the second structure.
So I think what you're going towards is should the code be modified?
Well,
That's what it would ultimately.
Well, I
that's
would
how
say,
you
does the
do it.
code, it says, we're saying here, a variance would need to be granted for a second structure.
Yeah.
Where did that come from? Is there a
So
basis for, why would we even say that? Like, we would just say, why would we even have a variance if you could never have a second structure?
So a variance is you can get a variance for almost anything. It's the village saying you can break the rules, essentially. So like if where's a special use, we say as long as you meet this criteria, you can have this. A variance is different in that it's allowing you to break the rules, essentially. So I think in order to have a process in which you can have more than one unattached structure, you'd have to change the
My
rules.
thoughts are just that.
No, I get it.
More in 20, 30, 40 years from now, things change, and
I know
it brings value to properties if they're done with taste and sound, and and I think us residents should have an ability to maybe do it. I mean, if not, and the board never approves any kind of ability to do that, so be it. But I think
We're also trying to keep a park-like appearance.
I get it, but
That's
the
all.
park we have at the corner has a gazebo, right? That's a park structure. But if you have something like that in your yard, it's not taking away from the park-like atmosphere. It's a shelter to sit when it's raining and you can still be in your backyard. I mean, that's my thoughts behind it. Like, I get it. Like, everyone wants it to be wide open, or they did when this was all decided. I mean, I just think that as we move forward, if somebody's going to spend the money to make something better, we should have an avenue that they have to get it approved.
Yeah.
Obviously, but I think there needs to be a
No,
way for
yeah,
something like that.
Yeah.
It's one thing to, if this were a clean slate, and we were able to contribute in the decisions that arrived at where we are, i.e. the cabana that the guy probably spent $50,000 extra because of what we
Right. And
what we
honestly
coached
don't
him
think
on.
that was-
We did
yeah.
we did not, at least this board didn't have the opportunity to participate and offer guidance, so that the intent and the preservation of the park was adhered to. So I think a continuation is a win. We all apparently need to be smarter on the subject. Andy, find what you can on the permit. Let's see if this cabana was permitted. If it was, then we'll have to go back to whether or not it was presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. That was before my time. But the shed, we also have to think about its precedent here. Mr. Lucitra, this is a beautiful house. I know it very well. I looked at it when I moved from Texas to Illinois. And I know you're also investing elsewhere in the neighborhood. It's not to go unnoticed. But if we allow your cabana, which may or may not have been permitted, whether you knew it or not, and a shed, we are really opening ourselves for a line out the door for people asking for 2 structures. And we've struggled with allowing people 1 structure. So we need to get smarter. Continuation is probably something that makes sense tonight as opposed to a formal vote, but we could vote tonight. I don't know that it would be favorable. But again, we're just a recommending body. It's up to the board to make the final decision. So if you would allow us to get smarter, I think a continuation would be a good idea.
Sure.
And thank you for your patience through the process.
Okay, we will continue this then till next month and see if we have more information.
Very good. Thank
We
Thank you
need
for
a
your time.
motion to do that.
Okay, can we hear a motion to continue? Dan, and second?
I'll second.
Diane, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, this matter is continued until next month. All right, so now we're going to talk about gardens. Do you want to start us off, Andy?
Yeah, I can do that. So the garden regulations, this is something that we talked about probably it was before the summer, but due to some of the scheduling conflicts and then trying to get as many of the shed petition and fence petitions through as possible, this got continued, got delayed, but here we are back at it again. So provide some of the background. In January of this year, a new state law went into effect, basically saying that municipalities cannot prohibit gardens. It is against the law for them to do that. And then another thing that was happening at the same time was the village's community garden program for the first time this year, which has been a big success. I think we're going to look to expand it next year. For anyone who doesn't know, it's right behind the pump houses. We have a bunch of garden beds. But anyways, the issue that came to be is that we cannot prohibit gardens, nor have we prohibited gardens. And we have these garden beds, but garden fences or garden barriers technically count as fences, which are prohibited. So the initial conversation was to allow some kind of garden barriers for garden beds or raised beds so that people could protect their gardens and not technically be violating the code. So that conversation kind of expanded a bit more to garden regulations generally. So I took the feedback from this commission and then also the Board of Trustees, which discussed the issue at one of their meetings, and came up with a few options for regulations. And so tonight, this item, as well as the other zoning regulations, they're all discussion items, so they're not an official public hearing. The idea would be that we would do an official public hearing next month, put it in the paper and all of that, and then it could go to the board. But I wanted to bring these here tonight to discuss, to get the ideas from the commission, to kind of get some more of a consensus around what options or regulations we want to go forward with and what we don't. And so that's about that. So right now, I have 4 things listed. The first one, to define garden barrier. As something, a garden barrier is any structure designed to protect a garden from animals. Trellises used for planting purposes are not considered garden barriers. This is a good suggestion that Commissioner Sveska had, because some people use trellises for tomatoes or other plants. And so just the reason would be to ensure that those trellises wouldn't be prohibited. The other regulations proposed are the next one is that the combined height of the garden bed or box and the garden barrier would be or must be 5 feet or less. The reason is that to prevent things from getting too tall, but also allow someone to build it tall enough that it can keep out most of the small critters and even maybe some deer. That's the idea there. I know this was one of the big things that we discussed, kind of went back and forth as to how high, from what point. So my thinking was 5 feet total. If you have a raised garden bed that's 4 feet, then you're allowed 1 feet of fence or barrier. If you have a garden on the ground, then you're allowed 5 feet of whatever barrier. The other one is the total area of garden beds or gardens generally on a property. And I put a question mark in there because this is really something I want to get some input from the commission on as to how many square feet do we think someone should be able to make a garden in their backyard or their yard. You know, I know some people have expressed the concern of, you know, what if somebody wants to turn their entire backyard into a garden? Is that something that we want? Or do we not want? Do we care or whatnot? So I put that there as a kind of a fill-in-the-blank limit. And then the final one is that raised garden beds and boxes and gardens generally must be placed at least 5 feet from a property line. Just kind of a typical, we usually, whether it's a structure or a pool or something like that, we try to get a little bit of setback from the property line. So those are the options that I came up with after getting the input from the commission and the board. What are your thoughts?
Are there any, I know with the new law, does it say we can't say you can't do it in the front yard, you have to do it in the back or the side? There's not, like, they can put a garden anywhere, right? Is that basically the gist of the? It's always, they're a little vague. It just says that villages cannot prohibit gardens. Way we read that is that means we can't tell somebody you cannot plant a garden in your front yard. Right. So that restriction is not on here. We could, right? We could say they're subject to the back of your house, behind your house line.
I don't know. I don't think we can.
Yeah, I think the issue with that might be, like, let's say someone had a heavily shaded backyard with all their trees,
that's
and
how they all are in
want
my
a
neighborhood.
garden, and the only place they have to get adequate sunlight is in their front yard.
And I'm fine with that. I was just trying
Sure.
to get clarification on. Okay, this looks like good. The square footage we'd have to figure out. Is that what we're going to try to decide here now?
Yeah, to talk about it right now.
Let's talk about turning your entire property into a garden. What's the problem with that? Is there a problem with that?
Well, fundamentally, no, right? It'd be great for everyone to grow their own food, but
Be a farm
Or
then.
even flower garden. I mean,
Sure,
we
sure.
don't.
But I think the issue is putting the barrier, which could be up to 5 feet, around the perimeter of the garden. When if someone says, my entire front yard is a flower garden, which is amazing,
Right.
but then proceeds to fence in the entire front yard. So I think that's kind of the gray area that we're trying to be very careful on how we define how to use the barrier, which is kind of why I wonder if we should include in your language about the barrier, which I think is great, by the way, that it would be a seasonal structure that would need to be removed when not growing.
I don't know how easy or I don't know if that would
Yeah,
be
I know,
a
but I'm
burden,
just saying, I wonder, would that keep someone from putting in a chicken wire 5 foot?
I think 5 feet's
perimeter.
kind of high, personally. No, I don't know.
Well, so I think the issue on height, and I've been doing a lot of reading on ADA accessible gardening. For someone in like a wheelchair, for example, they would need a minimum a counter height access to do gardening in a raised bed. So, which is kind of crusting up on that, 4 feet within a foot barrier on it. So, I think 5 feet's actually okay.
I thought we had talked before about some limitations on what the material would be for the
Yeah, I think
fencing
we should.
material, right? To try to
Because I think
ensure that it wasn't going to be something very permanent.
Yeah, because I mean, a garden fence could be very much like what we saw the first petitioner in here with the fence this morning, that type of wire mesh that can obviously stay put for 60 plus years.
Well, I was going to say,
Want
to
that.
your point before about making it temporary, because in my mind, a garden fence, I mean, that could be anything from chicken wire to like a
Nylon
like a
mesh.
nice wooden structure, do we want to limit it to strictly chicken wire and strictly during gardening season?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm not bothered by it.
I mean, I don't know. I don't foresee. I mean, of course, you never know, but I don't foresee somebody making their whole front yard a garden and doing that. I mean, of course, it's anything. I mean, it's technically possible, but I think that I think if there's a concern about having it up more than just during the gardening seasoning, then I think we would want to restrict the material to something that's easy to remove. If that's not a concern, then I think we give a bit more leeway. Because I mean, I know there's some nice garden barriers out there, but I would say they're permanent. You know, like they're wooden with
like
connections and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
they're
that's
not taking
there.
that down.
Right.
and I bet those, and honestly, I bet some of those exist in the village right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
We did a couple of years ago limit the coverage of like natural prairie planting areas as a proportion of your total yard, right?
Did we?
Here we're talking about
I think we did.
raised beds or boxes cannot be within 5 feet of a property line. But a couple of years ago, we were talking about natural plantings versus lawn, and didn't we establish some sort of,
I don't remember.
like, you couldn't turn your entire front yard into a,
So I don't have
meadow,
full
you know.
knowledge of this. I think this issues came up before I was with the village, but I believe there at some point there is a home in the village that the village tried to get to them to remove the natural plantings based on that regulation. I believe it went to court and we lost. And so to this day, that home's front yard has like 4 or 5 feet plantings all over. So I don't, if we did do that regulation, I don't think it was upheld.
well, I'm talking about in the last couple of years or something that we address. I don't remember how we resolved it, but
Types of plants, like we didn't want the buckthorn, and we didn't want certain
Yeah, we talked about
things
that.
but I don't think it addressed the amount you could do.
No, you're right. Yeah, we did.
Because we took milkweed off.
There's
the noxious
there was
material.
something about like invasive species or
Yeah.
something like that. I don't remember all the details, but yeah, that Commissioner Bruno reminded me with that.
I mean, that's why I think the
Yeah.
square footage isn't a bad idea. I know, like, we don't want, but I wouldn't know what number to say. Like, did you say
Well, I mean,
500 square feet is enough? Like, if you really want to do a garden, or is you need 5,000?
Depends on what you're growing.
Well,
if
what-
you're growing corn, that's one thing. If you're growing, mint, it's something completely
Or
different.
tomatoes, right?
but what we're
House-
limiting is what area can be a raised garden bed with an enclosure, right? Versus what area you can plant
Which is
stuff that
actually
you
a
plan
good
to.
point. What if
pick
someone
and
plants
eat.
directly into the ground? Are they still allowed to have a barrier? If I go till my front yard and plant corn in it, can I still put up a 5-foot fence?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know.
That seems questionable. I mean, that seems like one of those points that we probably need to address a little bit better.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I'm not saying someone would do it, but I'm saying they could
But
do
it says, like, right, we'd say raised garden, beds, boxes, and gardens in general.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be the 5 feet applies to the ground
From
up.
the ground up is the way I was thinking about it.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I know there's a lot of discussion of from where? From the garden bed or from the ground? So that's how I approached it with the options.
How old is this statute?
The
Year.
Illinois one?
that was just passed.
Recent.
2020.
Came into law in January of this year.
Yeah. So our surrounding committees or communities do not have many, if any, regulations concerning gardens.
Yeah, so I looked
They
this
allow
up. It was they allow fences, so the issue doesn't come up there. Well, the garden barrier issue doesn't come up. As far as gardens generally, let's see. I don't remember which municipality it was. One municipality says that the only regulation they have is that it has to be in the rear yard, which I don't think is allowed by the law now. The other municipalities, the only restrictions they have are the ones that we have on the books right now, saying you can't garden for commercial use. That's the only restrictions.
I'm good with these, and then leave it if it got needed another point. We could add it before it goes. With this, if we voted on this and we said, okay, we agree with all of these points, we say it should be 1,000 square feet, whatever. Then the board would vote on it next session.
So what will happen is this will come to you again next October, or in an October meeting, and then at that meeting, the plan would be to vote, give your recommendations at that meeting for the board.
So right now we want to figure out, should we add another point?
Yeah, I mean, do we want to add points,
something,
revise?
and then vote next month?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess my question is, like, what flexibility do we have to add any points? I mean, if what you're saying is, somebody can do it in their front yard and they can make it 5 feet high and we don't like it, you're saying the state statute says you're SOL and you have to put up with it.
Well, we could
So,
say
like,
you have a garden, but you can't have a barrier or fence around it, and so you got to take that out right now, right? I think that's what we're.
Yeah, I
coming
don't
from.
think we can.
You could do.
We
what you
cannot
want.
effectively prohibit a garden. That is
So we're trying to
essentially
come up with a way to
yeah,
prevent
to regulate it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
with the
to-
fences. Not really regulate the garden, because you could do whatever
Yeah.
you want, except for we want to regulate that the people don't put up fences all around their house or their yard.
Yeah.
Because saying it's a garden.
Yeah. So I guess I have in my head, what does everybody else think of it? Like something like 6 or 8 square feet is what I have in mind as far as raised garden. Is that reasonable?
Well, they're
Or am
what?
I-
Usually by 3 by 6 or 4 by 5.
Yeah, each of my raised beds are, I think, 2 feet by 8 feet, and I have 3 of them, and I'm probably going to add a couple more.
30 plus.
So,
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just doing like container gardening, right? I'm not
Yeah.
doing like substantial, like I'm not growing corn.
Yeah.
I'm not growing watermelons or anything that needs space to spread. I'm growing very small things.
yeah.
So someone who's a more experienced gardener might,
I mean, you can grow other things. It's just that you
Requirements.
can't put the barriers around it, and you can't have the boxes. You
Yeah.
can,
Yeah,
that's
the
what we're
only-
saying here.
The only square footage limitation we're talking about is trying to establish some limit for raised
raise beds.
garden beds or boxes that could have a,
It says gardens
That's
generally, so
Yeah,
I
well,
assume
I
we're
would-
still talking about.
I would say the square footage for the amount of garden barrier is the way I would word it.
Say that again?
So the square total area of the raised,
Oh,
I think that'd be like square footage that you can have a barrier around,
yeah, okay,
whether it's raised or it's not raised.
yeah.
so that could be something more like, no more than
So we'd have to add
eight,
that.
8 by
Add
10 foot
barrier.
area total
Right.
could be,
Yeah,
fenced
yeah.
in.
Fenced in, yeah, or
I mean,
raised.
plant stuff beyond that if you want, but you can't fence it in more than an 8 by 10 area or
Under
something.
100
I
square
don't
feet
know.
or
But I'm not a gardener, so I don't know.
Do we know anyone in the
What's a
village that
reasonable
has an
amount?
established garden area that does have an existing barrier around it that we could use as a reference point?
Yeah, my neighbor,
Okay.
Anderson's, yeah.
We know about like how big it is?
Isn't it about 10 by 5 or 10 by 6 or something?
That's pretty good
I think
size.
more. 10.
And they have like a barrier around it
They
right
have
now?
like chicken wire all around
Okay.
it, and they have a little gate that they go in and out.
Oh,
of,
yeah, sure, okay.
Yeah.
And that
Pontiac
suffices?
And Blackhawk meet.
Oh, right there on the
Right
corner,
the corner.
okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. And that suffices for them, like that's served its purpose?
Yeah, and they're avid gardeners.
Oh, okay. So they obviously know
Yeah.
what they're
I mean,
doing.
obviously they have all kinds of flowers and plants, but
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
their vegetables.
Okay.
And I think it looks fine, and it's in the front because they don't have a backyard.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about
'Cause they're the
now, yeah.
corner.
Yep.
I don't find it offensive, so
She's buying you off with tomatoes.
It's also,
Works every time.
do we know of anybody that has anything any bigger than that they use in the village?
I haven't seen anything bigger.
I mean, I don't really look for those things, so I don't.
I mean,
I don't
I can't tell, right? It's not a scale, but you can see it
Oh.
like there.
Yeah.
It's like that thing.
It looks bigger than I thought, but yeah. Again, we have big yards, so it's not like,
Yeah.
it takes up the
I
whole.
just want to put this in a larger context. I mean, like, we've spent a lot of time the last couple months talking about like structures and like how they impact the aesthetics of the community. So, like, as we go down and we start considering these types of things, you know, the idea of just like front yards just becoming like 5-foot gardens with barrier walls seems a little bit counterintuitive to some of the discussions that we've had in terms of like sheds. So I just want to be like mindful that we spend a lot of time talking about aesthetics. So
I mean, we
before
could
we,
say no barriers. We could
I'm,
totally
I'm,
say that.
I'm just saying before we look at doing this because the state says it shall be XYZ, we need to also look at what the village wants in terms of like trying to ensure there's some type of like
Yeah, I know,
standard and
yeah.
aesthetics here. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it's tough. It is because I mean, at the same time, I think most people would agree or would think that if you got a garden, you'd want to protect it. You know, so but I hear what you're saying. It's you know, and then an idea that comes to my mind is okay. So we can't say you can't have a garden in the front yard. We could say no garden barriers in the front yard, but then like your neighbor, like you just said, your neighbor would still technically be non-compliant. So
Or
Well,
is
it's
that,
hard-
or is
yeah.
that their side yard?
It's
Yeah.
probably a side
It's a
yard
corner.
because, you
That-
know,
corner
those
lots are tricky.
odd. Yeah. Well, and I just think in the interest of, I mean, lawns are terrible for our environment. You know, these are good for our environment. These things are good for our environment, and that's why I'm a lot more open to allowing.
I don't think anybody's opposed to the positive environmental impact. I just think it's aesthetics. I mean, like visually, I think we spend a lot of time talking about it and kind of asking people like, how big is your garage or what are you going to do with all these different things? And like, we need to look critically at this particular thing because, you know, it could end up kind of, pardon my pun, but growing out of control.
So we could do this case by case, say that nothing's allowed unless we, you know.
Then are we going to have to call in everybody that hasn't existed? So, I mean, that doesn't seem
Andy's
like
got a lot of free time now that the shed
resource
case-
endeavor. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just make the comment that this is a brand-new law. It has not been interpreted, as far as I know, by the courts or anybody else. And it doesn't say the village can't regulate. And I think that could encompass many areas, including the front yard of a home. I mean, I
Yeah.
can't envision that people are gonna be growing corn in the front yards. I don't think anybody wants to see that. And some people will keep it up and some people won't. And I tend to agree with, Commissioner
Dan?
yeah, that's really important to how our neighborhoods look and the property values, so.
Yeah.
I do think there is a lot of discretion in the statute. All it says is you can't prohibit. That doesn't mean you can't regulate,
Yeah.
you
Mm-hmm.
know? So that's how I would look at it.
Right.
That's why these options that you came up with here, and that's why maybe we add a few more. But, I mean, these are a great starting point, and maybe even a finishing if we added a few more things to it, but I think these would do it. I don't know, I don't think we'd want to tell someone they couldn't do it in the front. I mean, but if, maybe we come up with a definition more of what can be used, you know, as Diane said, like as the material, as your fence. I think that would be something we should add to this, and that would help keep the aesthetics in an important part of it.
We could definitely say for the front yard, it has to be a much smaller area if you were to do this in the front.
Yeah, yeah.
Or we could just leave the barrier / combined bed height at 5 feet and say it's seasonably applicable, must go up when things are planted and must come down when their season is done. Which holding people to that I think is going to be difficult, don't get me wrong.
Right.
Yeah, the front yard, you'd see it. Backyard, who's going to enforce that? But-
Well, and I like the idea, but
Our
I think
neighbors
the tricky thing would be kind of like, again, Chair Costello's neighbor. If something has a gate on it, I don't think that's going to be easily removable,
Exactly.
right?
No, that's a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a problem.
And I mean, I don't know how we'd codify this, but it is in their side yard, and it is like they have so many, and they have so many tall bushes and trees and everything. It's almost sheltered from view from the street anyway. I mean, it's very well done, but how do you
I
put
say
that
we
in writing?
all have this now. We can go back, maybe come up with some other points, ideas to bring it up at the October meeting. So
So I think, do we all agree
it's not
on
a rush, right?
point one?
I mean,
No,
I
there's
think
no
this-
rush.
'cause there's no petition.
Especially
and-
we're going into the winter or
Yeah.
fall and winter now, so
So 1, 2, and 4, do we have any discussion, or are we all good with what those items say?
Would your neighbor be willing to attend a plan commission meeting?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
I am not a garden expert, nor do I claim to be one.
uh-huh,
And I hear a lot of ideas, good ideas,
yeah,
but if it's important to someone and they do it right,
yeah,
should we be listening to them?
yeah. We rely on Danielle for our gardening stuff, too, and, yeah.
No, but I
and
think
another
somebody
voice-
that's been doing it for a while and
Yep,
probably
another
grows
voice
a
would be
variety
great,
of stuff
yeah.
bigger than what I do would have good feedback.
Uh-huh, yeah.
Is there
Yeah.
a chance they could take a look at what we've done to
Yeah,
date, which
I'll-
is 5 bullets?
I'll go talk to them and see what they say, and
gonna be like,
get
"What?"
some more input.
No.
And then,
Yeah.
and then we'll
Well,
pull
and
their
if-
garden.
If we had a prohibition against raised beds in a front yard, in a case like a corner lot, there would be an exception
A variance,
made if you
right.
don't really have a backyard, or,
Yeah.
or there could be some sort of ability to review it with the village staff and say, where on my property am I allowed to put this? Because I don't
Yeah.
have a backyard like other people do. And a determination could be made. I mean, in the case of your neighbor, they'd be allowed to put it in their side yard,
Yeah, yeah.
like they
It is.
have it.
Their front is unobstructed,
Yeah.
it is on the side. Okay, but we're okay with 1, 2, and 4, and we just seem to have more to discuss on number 3.
And maybe add another point based on the Andersons, maybe, if they want to come.
Yeah, let me go talk to them about this. Yeah, we can do that. And, but anyway, we've got some consensus. Any further discussion tonight on this?
No, great point though, Dan, that if we're going to make, spend all the time with the other stuff, we should make sure this is done correctly.
Mm-hmm. I think we're talking a lot about it, and there's really not going to be that much need for raised gardens, but we should be ready for it. Yeah.
okay.
All right, so now we're going to talk about commercial signage.
Yes. So, basically, staff is coming with some recommendations on updating our signage code, and our signage. The section of our code that our signage is under the business zoning section, so it is a zoning matter. That's why it's here. And our code, I think our code is pretty good on regards to most of what's currently in there, except for the illumination stuff. The only requirement we have right now for illumination is that The sign shall only be on during business hours. And then if the sign is illuminated by a light, that light can't cause any pollution that could disrupt like a vehicle or something like that. And so I looked through the village codes of some other municipalities like Western Springs and Hinsdale, a few others, and kind of looked at what their code said related to commercial signage and illumination. And so came up with a list of 4 recommendations that I think would be good for signage going forward related to lighting. The first one is that illuminated signs shall not produce more than 350 lumens. And so I know...
What's that?
We're talking... Yeah, so measurements of light. The 350 number is essentially below... It's below... it's a more restrictive regulation than like LaGrange or Hinsdale. Mm-hmm. And it's a slightly more lenient than the Western Springs one. So the lumens, the 350 lumens is equivalent to what's called 30-foot candles. This is back from when we measured light in candles. And so a 30-foot candle is like probably this, or similar to what you'd have in like a bigger interior room. And so of course this is outside too, so I kind of just took from what other villages do. I'm recommending more of a restrictive one than some of the others, but still within the standards. And so that's the first recommendation. The other ones are that no illuminated signs would be hanging or placed inside of a window, whether it's flashing or not or whatever. So just to make it look a little cleaner, less tacky. And then the other one, no flashing signs. And then the fourth one, no neon lights. I pretty much just copied this code from the other municipalities, and I think this would help with making going forward commercial lighting that is not too bright, because right now we have no restriction. And I know a lot of people aren't happy with the new smoke shop sign. That's one of the impetus for this. And so that sign meets all the standards. It meets all the standards. It's part of the problem is that we don't have illumination standards beyond what I put up here.
Do those exceed 350 lums of illumination?
The smoke shop one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I looked it up.
Like, are those like 1,000? I don't know.
I don't remember what it was. It's not that much, but it is more than 350.
So if we vote on... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, we're going to keep what we have, and these are additional restrictions that we're talking about. Okay.
Yeah.
So if we vote on recommended approval on this, will it apply to the existing signs in the village? Is there anything we can do about that sign?
It's grandfathered in.
Or are we saying it's got to stay? Because I heard a lot of people that are not happy.
I'm pretty confident it has to stay. I mean, maybe if we paid for the replacement, maybe. But other than that, it would become a legal, non-conforming structure. So, yeah, unfortunately. So,
is there an ordinance on the physical size of the sign?
There is some regulations on the size of the sign, yeah.
And how is that
Are they compliant?
So it's based off of the
percentage of storefront?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got it. It's a percent. It's a... What is it? It is... Yeah, it's a percentage of the square feet of the sign compared to the linear feet of the storefront.
And that sign's in conformance?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
So
I'd be looking at that, too.
So not to deviate from the discussion too much, but have we approached the business owners there and told them that the village residents aren't happy with that and asked them if they would willingly
the smoke shop, no, they're aware because they've had issues with.
So are they going to do anything about it, or?
No.
Great.
They So one issue that we've had with them is, and this is not just them, some other businesses too, of them leaving the lights on past their business hours. So that's something that we've within the last couple of months have ramped up with the police, letting them know to keep an eye out for it. Because obviously we're not here at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, but they are. So there's that, and then the smoke shop in particular. Yeah, they're aware that they're aware that it's not the most popular business. But
What does the LED trim lighting on the storefront, what does that qualify as? Is that part of the signage, or is that?
Perimeter lighting?
The on that front, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
That would not be part of the signage. That would be like the no placement inside windows. Illuminate.
Have that.
No, so we
Rule
can't
under-
do anything about
yeah.
it.
Yeah. And I mean, we'll so myself and the village administrator, we had a conversation about this stuff, about how if this would apply to any of the current businesses. Our thinking is that, well, especially with the sign itself, the big one, that would be illegal non-conforming if this went through. The other stuff, I'm not sure. We will have to check with the attorney to see what we can and cannot require, even if we went through with these. But so it's not a definite, but I'm thinking that they would still be able to keep things as is, honestly. But we'll see.
Yeah.
And as long as it's conforming, staff can approve it currently.
Yeah. I mean, with that sign, people were upset. Why did we approve this? Why approve this? It met all the standards. We can't say no when it meets the law. So.
Yeah.
Signage is so important. I mean, you look at the smoke shop sign and it's one extreme, and then you look at the oak pantry sign and it's the other extreme.
Oh yeah, and this is an ongoing thing with the Economic Development Committee. We're trying to figure out or plan ways that we can try to incentivize or work with the landowner there to upgrade the signage. It's just a long and tough, difficult process, but that is something that we are actively trying to do. Is
Typically, signage is a tenant cost.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Fixturing. Also, condition number 4: no neon lights. Neon can be done very tastefully, so I don't think we should prohibit it, because I can show you hundreds of neon signs that really pop and can be done tastefully.
Okay.
How would you regulate that in any way if we wanted to? Is there a way?
Well, that's what I was getting at. I hate that there are certain limitations that any sign can be passed by staff. I hate to introduce more government, but I also I don't know that this body or the board would have approved that sign had we been given a bite at the apple.
Yeah.
But I don't want to slow down the process. I want to improve the processes, which we're doing. But how would I regulate neon? It's a great question.
So that we know that there's some neons we don't want.
Yeah. Does your garden guy know neon?
I'll ask. He knows a lot.
But this would be good to put in our regulations so that going forward.
Yes.
And
that's the idea. I mean, going forward to prevent it. So.
Well, and that shopping center is, there's one owner that owns that entire property, not the outlot, but the whole shopping center. Okay. So, because it's occurred to me where, if you're in discussions with them about ways to improve the property, if there's any talk whatsoever of incentives to them to do so, then, they need to comply with conditions that are put on them. One of which I think would be requiring them to be cooperative with the people that own the outlot that had the Dome restaurant.
Was something like this put in the PUD?
We've seen a couple of proposals for that corner where we were told by the owner of that corner that the property owner of the shopping center was not willing to work with them.
Right.
Yes. No, yeah, it's all
Until
it's
that
all
changes, I wouldn't be
interlocking, yeah.
working with them to provide them any incentives.
Yeah, no, it's all
It's
it's
a
all
two-way
part of the
street.
equation. Yeah, oh yeah. It's all part of the equation. Yeah.
Okay.
So everybody's in agreement on all of these except the neon lights. We might be missing an opportunity to have tasteful neon lights. Is that right?
Yep.
So is the,
Can we say not the bad neon lights?
yeah,
just the-
exactly. Greg has to approve.
What's a bad neon light? I'm just kidding. I don't know anything about neons. So.
It could be gaudy, I imagine.
I mean, yeah, sure. I
Yeah.
guess. I don't know.
So I suppose the question, and I don't know anything about it myself, but is the risk worse of going with distasteful neon lights versus the opportunity to have tasteful neon lights? Do we want this in our code?
If we place a limitation on the lumen level and the fact that it can't be flashing and moving and, then are there certain kinds of neon lighting that would be compliant that we would be willing to accept if they're not garish?
And I don't know enough about it to make a comment.
It's not the
What
fact
do you
that it's
think, Greg?
neon,
Yeah.
it's the fact that it's, too bright or it's moving or it's flashing or it's something that's what makes it
Right.
obnoxious, right?
Greg, you said you could give an example of a good neon light.
Yeah, if my battery wasn't dead on my phone, I'd find one for you.
Okay.
Battery died.
And Andy, what was the thought process in putting that in exactly?
It's just it's a common thing. Yeah,
I see.
I poached it. Yeah, and I could see. I mean, yeah, I could see neon lights being tacky, but I think he brings up a good point. I could see it being cool too. I think unfortunately I don't know if there's any way we can regulate between good and bad. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So, but again, Greg, I'm relying on you. If the lumens are low enough, is that enough to ensure that the neon won't be
No.
terrible?
No,
Okay,
it could still be a
that
gaudy,
doesn't do it.
dim neon light.
Yeah. All right.
So
Maybe we want to just
valid.
keep it in there then, huh?
we might. I think that the neon, especially with the LED technology, is going the way of the
Yeah.
dinosaur.
Right.
Because unless it's in a channel, it's subject to hail and the elements. So at least in the exterior installations. So I'm fine.
And I mean, I
with
guess
it.
if someone really wanted a neon sign, they could ask for a variance, right?
Right.
It could.
So that's
Well, you don't get a variance for this, do you? I mean, ordinances are ordinances.
You could always do a
you could.
they
variance.
could ask. They could ask for one.
Variance.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
So I think we're fine to leave it in there.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. And if I didn't want to be for the existing businesses, but if we did have a new development that wanted a neon sign, then they would go through the PUD and then we could
Right.
grant it to them that way.
Ah, right.
So
Or not.
that wouldn't apply to the existing ones, but a new development with a cool neon sign, we could do that way.
Oh, yeah.
So-
Okay. Yeah. Then that's good.
And then just go back, like, so if we do put this in the code and the board does, if the whole shopping plaza got torn down, they built a new one, then they would have to adhere to this.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
New tenants applying for a sign petition.
Right.
Would have to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, anybody replacing a sign would have to apply the new code as well. So
Are you thinking of taking a rock
Protest.
to
in
the
front, right?
signage? Okay, so shall we make a motion to recommend to the board?
or I'm sorry, so this wasn't actually advertised, and so this has to come back.
Oh, yeah, we're
Come
talking
back
about
next
next
month
month.
then.
Yeah, we'll
That's
talk
right.
about it again next week.
Okay, this is
Okay,
good that
this
to
is good.
advertise with, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
sounds good. This we'll go with. So
And can you, between now and then, can you educate us on what the provision is relative to size?
yes, I can do that. Yeah.
Because we might also want to compare our size restrictions to the same gamut of neighbors.
Yeah, we were generally a little more restrictive.
Were we?
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I can get you that, and maybe I could find a good YouTube video on lumens if we are interested. So.
I did Google it, and sunlight is like 3,000 or something.
So the vape store is about 1,000.
Your office is 100. This is probably 60, and a warehouse is 30.
Something like that. Yeah.
All right, so advertise it, and then we're vote on it next time.
Okay, and then we've got some information regarding regulations for home occupation.
Yeah, this is something that was brought up briefly last meeting, and Commissioner Sveska made the point that, and this is not exclusive to this section of the code. I couldn't give you other code sections off the top of my head right now, but a lot of our code was written in 1964, and so there are some outdated terms that might as well be updated. And specifically, I think she mentioned the dressmaking as one of the home occupations. I see no issue updating it to sewist, or I looked this stuff up. So, sewist is the more unisex terminology.
Defining terminology.
Right, you should make a shirt or shorts or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Not just
So
dresses.
whatever you want.
Yeah. So that's the one in this that I think why not update it.
I mean,
So-
we're just talking about that.
Yeah. I mean, I as far as anything, I mean, it's open discussion if anyone thinks anything should be modified elsewhere. But
Current one is behind.
the opinion of staff is that this code is good enough for enforcing businesses that we don't want in residential.
So did something
areas.
come up where
Well-
somebody?
Oh yes, it did.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah. But that actually would lead me to my next question, unless you have another
No,
comment. So.
continue.
So as we're talking about home occupation and enforcement, what is our process, policy, procedure on continuing to review those homes that we know have violated this, and we are in suspicion are continuing to violate it? Like, what are we doing to ensure that doesn't happen in our community?
It's really if the issue comes up again. I mean, we follow up initially to make sure the business is closed, that they're not operating, and then we leave it from there. And then if
So
it's reported again, then we
Can
investigate.
one still list their online business address as a home address in Indian Head Park?
Yes. Yeah, you
can.
can. You can. Yeah.
We're just concerned with who's going in and out there, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the primary
Well,
concern,
the
that there's
nature
no
of the
commercial
nature of the
activity,
business,
that
right.
there's not dangerous material,
Which
stuff
is
like
the
that.
Traffic.
So. But yeah, like but the reason why you can still list it as your address is you can do the paperwork for your business at home. You can do filing. You can do all of that at home. It's just you can't have the activity or the
Retail.
Yeah, yeah.
Manufacturing.
Yeah.
And you can have vehicles continue to come and go as long as they don't have signage on them representing the business that is represented at that address online, correct?
Yes. So, like, I mean, for specifically the one on Hiawatha, that gentleman's personal vehicle is also his work vehicle. So he has the sign on it, but he has a magnet, because we have other regulations related to commercial vehicles. So
Yeah, we had that.
so yeah. So yeah.
And there's no question that the person that resides at the home and uses the home address as their business address can come and go in their vehicle. The issue is employees or customer traffic that's generated. That's
Oh,
what,
yeah.
that's what the home occupation section of the code does not allow.
Yes.
Is traffic that's generated by the business, other than something like someone, teaching piano lessons in their house or something, which is different. I have one question I do have under C is, it does say here, exterior signs shall be limited to those permitted by the sign regulations for residence districts. What signs are allowed in residence districts?
They're generally prohibited.
Okay.
Yeah, they're prohibited. So
other than like a garage sale tomorrow, kind of
Yeah.
like temporary type things like
Yeah.
that would not be
Exactly.
up
exactly.
for more than a day.
I mean, because we just don't want additional traffic coming through. Where someone's selling retail.
Oh yeah,
products,
you don't
mean,
want commercial activity in residential
Right.
area. Yeah.
Well, we don't want residential homes housing large volumes of industrial chemicals.
Right. Or
Any
repair
further
shop.
discussion?
Well, it does note here as well, no exterior storage of equipment or materials. So someone could have a commercial vehicle, their own commercial vehicle, but the expectation is it can be, ideally it's in a garage, but it's certainly not marked. But they can't just be leaving piles of work-related materials.
Even if they're part
In-
of a decorative
No.
outdoor setting?
So,
So we were just talking about changing A2, right? Like dressmaker right now, and then we're discussing if we need to add any,
Yeah.
recommend any additional items.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't have any recommendations other than I think it would be a good idea to update that term. But
Mhm.
In here, do we have anything about that picking up and selling? Does it specifically say delivery, merchandise, involves sale? I guess that would cover that, where people couldn't.
well, the way that we like basically everything's prohibited except for the first 5.
Right.
Anything else is you can't do it. You can't sell. You can't have a restaurant.
Right, so you can mail things from your house, but you can't have people come
Yeah. Oh
pick it
yeah.
up.
Yeah. You can do Etsy. You can do whatever like that. But yeah, it's the commercial activity that's the biggest part, and then also health and safety stuff that comes along with commercial activity.
as I look at this, though, I mean, we do clearly state in the code right now that you can't do exterior storage of equipment or materials, but there isn't actually any specific mention of storage of potentially hazardous materials like flammable or
Corrosive.
toxic or anything like that. We do say no manufacturing operation and no repair shop or service establishment, but we don't technically say you can't store things that
Wouldn't that be another part of
ought
the
to
code?
be.
Yeah, that could be
That would
somewhere
be
else.
another part of the code because it's
Yeah.
not really related to occupation
I think there is
So
necessarily.
it's probably
code for
somewhere
that.
else in the code.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, and then in some materials we can regulate, and others we can't. Like even the pesticides business. I mean, you're allowed to have pesticides.
Gas. I
Not
mean,
in quantities used for industrial or commercial applications.
Sure. And that's why they weren't allowed to have them. But but there is restrictions in the code about health and safety, what one can have, and what to the degree that we are allowed to regulate it. Yeah.
Yeah, because this is just covering occupation.
Yeah, this is just strictly for the occupations.
Would you like us to vote on a recommendation on this, or this was
This
just for
is another
discussion?
one. This is another one. We'll have to do a notice in the mail, so it'll be back to you next
Okay,
month.
all right, this is good. Okay. So you can think about this for the next meeting too, if anything, if any thoughts come to you between now and then, we can discuss again.
And then we'd have to, if we did add something, we'd have to send it out with the new.
Well, I'll advertise it as regulations concerning home occupations. So we have some room to. I don't have to do that
Okay.
letter for letter.
Perfect. Okay.
But I do need to do something. So.
Gotcha.
Dan just made a good point on section A, item number 3. We should probably change clergyman to clergy.
I like it.
Yeah, good point.
All right.
Yeah. Okay, any more discussion for the good of the group? Yes.
Lori Davis, 6482 Apache. Why have we given the COVID testing trailer an extension?
Because they asked for it, and we always try to
It's been there a long time.
Yeah, well, at first we wanted it there. I mean, for testing to be available, and so they asked. And our typical practice, whether it's a homeowner or business, is we try to work with them.
And it's supposed to be out by the end of the month?
Yeah,
now?
if it's not out by September 3rd, they'll get fined $100 every day it's not
30th?
out. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, 30th.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Tom Henshaw, 167 Cascade. First off, I want to thank you all for the work that you do. I appreciate it. We talked a bit tonight about, or you talked a bit tonight about the house at Blackhawk and Pontiac. And there is a sign on the house. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's a conservation at home. So this environmentally friendly yard is recognized for its water and soil conservation practices and protection of native plants and wildlife. And that is by the Conservation Foundation, the Forest Preserve of Cook County, and the University of Illinois Extension. So I think they work hard to make their home conservation at home.
Good to know. Thank you. Yeah. It's a good addition to this conversation. Yeah. Any further thoughts? Okay.
I have one public comment that was submitted online.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It was also related to the trailer. Just what is the update on the status of the COVID trailer? And like I said, they have to the end of the month.
Okay.
So
Who owns that?
it's
Is that the county?
no, it's a private individual.
Oh, really?
It's not open anymore?
No, I think it's open by appointment now.
Oh.
I know for a while it was walk-in, then they changed it to appointment.
And we gave a permit for that.
Yeah, we allowed it as a temporary use,
So
especially because when it first came about was when testing was extremely difficult. So, but now that things have tampered down and testing is much more available.
Is there an official date that the permit expired for them?
No, it's that
we can
temporary.
dictate though, kind of when we say. all
Yeah,
right.
and so we got to the point where we told them it's really not a public health need anymore since it's available, and so it's got to go.
Yeah, it was wonderful for a while.
Oh yeah,
Busy.
yeah. It was a good resource. Yeah.
Yeah, so. Okay, would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
I'll
Yes.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. See you all next month. Thank you.